Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Hello, folks. Good morning. This is Kyle Watkins. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group, and co-host today on today's podcast is Dr. Blair Ritchie, Executive Director, ISF, and partner at the Carrington Group, Jason Smith. How you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Good. Well, we like to kick off every episode with a leadership question. So, Dr. Blair, what do you got for us?
Okay, a little trivia. On this day, we're doing this on October 17th. On this day in history, today's legend arrived in the United States as he fled the rise of anti-Semitism in his native Germany. Though he possessed a keen intellect and a thirst for knowledge, his early academic teachers labeled him a bit dim and slow to learn. In fact, he was kicked out of one school because his indifference was setting a bad example for other students. But at the age of 12, he picked up a book on geometry and read it cover to cover, something I don't think any of us probably did when we were 12.
Safe bet.
His passion for scientific discovery and radical experiments would revolutionize modern physics. He was an amazingly complex man, a pacifist who once encouraged FDR to develop the atomic bomb. A true citizen of the world, he was once offered the ceremonial position of President of Israel. He was an avid violinist, had a fascination with plumbing, of all things, and was a member of the NAACP. His life was such an inspiration that Time magazine named him the Person of the Century in 1999. Who is this legendary leader? I'll be back at the close of today's program with the answer.
Very
There's
interesting.
a few twists in there.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you
Good
go.
work.
There you go. Thank you. I worked hard on this one.
Well, guys, I'm excited. We've got a great guest. Something near and dear to my heart today. So. Our guest today is John Royer. He is a principal for URSUS Capital, which includes investments in Three Nations Brewing Company and Central Texas Specialty Growers. He serves as the portfolio manager for projects funded by URSUS Capital, or overseeing operations of portfolio companies. He is currently serving as the general manager for Three Nations Brewing as it moves from phase 1 to phase 2 of its successful operational plan. Three Nations is recently recognized by the Dallas Observer's Best of Dallas edition as Best Local Brewery.
Nice.
Yes. They are currently opening a new expanded facility in downtown Carrollton in the fall of 2019. John is also an owner-operator of CarStar Collision Repair Center in Little Elm. John was formerly an executive responsible for human capital and resources for Nokia, a Fortune 100 global company, and accountable for managing the talent acquisition efforts in business groups in North America, Europe, and Asia. He brings more than 17 years of direct human capital expertise as a key business partner to senior executive and leaders within various organizations in which he worked. He has managed numerous global and regional human capital or human resource and staffing teams over his successful HR career. Additionally, he has coached, mentored, and managed numerous senior leaders in the building of high-performance management teams. John is a graduate of Baylor University and completed his...
Sick 'em Bears.
There you go. Easy. Jason's right there. And completed his MBA at the University of North Texas. He has spent years working in youth sports with disadvantaged youth. Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Man, there's some really good stuff in there, and I want to ask you about a number of different things, but first and foremost, I want to hear a little bit about your story. What maybe something happened early on in your life. What's put you on this path to where you are today?
That's a great question, but
Out of college, I was just a sales guy, probably pretty typical 20, 25-year-old, didn't really want to know what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
But pretty quickly learned that I didn't want to go door to door and sell anything, and inspired me to go back and get an MBA with an emphasis in human resources. At that time, I've always been really interested in people and improving lives and encouraging people. And I really felt like that aspect of HR, along with the business side, was something I'd be interested in. And over the course of the next 20 years, I really enjoyed that. I've always seen organizations as extensions of individuals as opposed to a collection of individuals. And so I think when I turned 50, a lot going on in 2008, and I said, well, now's as good a time as any for me to become an entrepreneur. And about went broke doing that, and but just jumped into it, and we've got a couple of projects that we're having fun with, and that's what I've done for the last. Tried to take all the experiences I had in the corporate world and see if they transferred into just the small business world.
Yeah.
So growing up, was there someone that kind of put you in a business mode, or was that something that you had to acquire on your own?
No, it's a funny thing because everybody in my family is a doctor. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, uncles and cousins, and man, I didn't have a bone in my body that said go into medicine. So I think I was a little bit lost in terms of really what I wanted to do. But there were a lot of things in my life. I was always really influenced a lot by my church. I went to a small Baptist church and just didn't know much about business because my dad was a doctor. He didn't come home and talk about things other than cuts and bruises and broken bones and stuff. So I think I had to search a little bit probably in my 20s to really find out what motivated me in my life. And I used to be at I think outside of work, I've always been really working with youth in sports and disadvantaged kids and things that we've done in our life. But I've had a hard time separating those two things. I hope I leave the world a better place through what I've done in business as well as in my personal life.
Interesting. So I want to ask you, with your interest in people and especially underneath in corporations, talent acquisition in 3 different continents. I'm sure there's a cultural issue over there, but what are some unique circumstances or some leadership skills that you've learned with different types of cultures or personalities?
Yeah. There's not any doubt. The way you recruit people, the way you retain people, the way you motivate people in the United States is really totally different than you do anywhere else in the world. You can't take our philosophies, you can't take our practices in the United States and try to apply them in other countries. They just don't work very well. Even though I think America's a wonderful place and love it tremendously, it's not Singapore, and it's not Johannesburg. It's not a lot of places. And you got to be able to recruit to their culture and the way that they do things. Nokia, I was at Nokia for 12 years, and it was a great experience because it was a European company based out of Finland. And so just seeing the socialistic nature of that country and how it really wrapped itself around the culture of that company. So even though I was operating out of the United States, it was really a Finnish culture. And one of the things I learned early on that I really enjoyed was the fact that in America, in my previous experience, it was really there was a level of management that made decisions over individuals, and if that individual wasn't performing, then you got rid of that individual or you replaced that individual, and the manager really had all the power. But at Nokia, one of the great things that we really we're a values-driven company. Number one, we always examine our business decisions through a lens of value. And the second thing I thought was fascinating is that managers were held accountable and responsible for whether their teams were working or not. Mm-hmm. So if your team wasn't working, you didn't fire 2 people because they weren't doing a good job. You went to the manager and said, "You're failing in your job. What do you need to do better? Do you need to hire better people? Do you need to train them better? Do you need to be a better role model? Whatever it is." And there was a much more of an emphasis on really the human capital taking care of that, as opposed to really more of an American. So back to your question, you do different. Whether you're in England or Germany or Japan, you have to be able to have the right people who can acquire the talent of where they'll be operating.
So cross-culturally, but also now we've got 4 generations of people in the workforce. So do you find ways to relate to those different groups even within the same culture?
I think I think technology and the advances in technology in the last 20 years, maybe 30 years, has really impacted the different levels of generation, how they relate to the workplace, how they communicate. They take their friends with them to work, and their text groups and things that they do. That has become part of the work. Maybe it's become part of school. I can imagine a class in which we allow phones, but now we have workplaces that allow phones and things. So you've got to adapt to the changing times, and you got to adapt to the culture that you're in. But years ago, I guess it was about 30 years ago, I went to a conference that Texas Instruments put on, and it was about high-performing teams and how you differentiate the difference between a team versus a group of individuals that perform the same job, and how high-performing teams operate and how you identify those. And that's really when my career path really took a change, because I became fascinated. Okay, if I'm gonna manage human capital, if I'm gonna hire human capital, if I'm gonna motivate human capital, I want them to be in high-performing teams. And they're always not so easy to put together. So, with the difference in generations, that is a challenge. With the difference in cultures, that can be a challenge as well.
So did you have to create your own systems, or did you leverage things that already existed to try to get up to speed on how to create those high-performing teams?
One of the things I think that if I've done anything well in my career is I've recognized that I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm really good at hiring really smart people.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what country that you're in, don't put me in there managing people from Finland. Don't put me in there managing Canadians or people in Brazil. It would be much easier to find the right kind of manager. And in that, I probably was a little bit different. I met a gentleman one time who really introduced me to behavioral differences. Not just, you look at a resume and you say, well, do they have the right skill set? Do they have the right background? And you interview the people. And he really introduced me to a philosophy that you need to look at high-performing people in jobs. What behaviors do they exhibit that is different than an average performing person in a job? Okay. Therefore, you create a job description around the behaviors that the high-performing person has, so that when you're hiring the people, the more high-performing people that you hire, then the better your team is going to perform, which was an interesting philosophy, and I've always tried to follow that to a degree.
Because you can train for skill, right? If you can hire the right people, you can train them on what you need them to do.
In some areas, if someone's a programmer and they've got to have programming, but within there, but yes, that I do think you find the talent, the behaviors that lend itself to people excelling in their job, rather than the person that's got 12 years in doing that.
That specific task.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So if you've got a high-performance team, there's no question you probably have a higher level of talent, because competence and talent separate high-performance teams. What other kind of factors that you've observed separate high-performance teams from others?
There's a couple of characteristics that I think are really important. Number one, characteristic of a high-performing team is you only have about 80% agreement. So when you sit at a table like this and you have 8 people, 9 people, 10 people sitting around it, if you all agree, you just need one person. And so what you want is you never want to leave the table without there being challenge to what you're attempting to do. Challenge is a good thing to making business decisions. But when you leave that table, the most critical aspect of a high-performing team is the fact that there's 100% agreement or support on that idea. You can't leave. I've seen groups of management teams leave, and a decision was made, and those senior leaders went back to the groups and just said, man, I hate this, but we got to do it, and they're making us do it. That's not a high-performing team. The high-performing team says, I was given my opportunity to voice my opinion. We didn't win on this one, but I want to tell you, we're doing this as if it was our idea, and let's go and let's. That's real leadership at that point. And when you have a team that can be openly honest with each other, challenge each other, and yet when they leave, they're still in the same team, then I think you can do something really special with that group of people.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how now, going from that world to jumping over into the entrepreneur space, how have you been able to translate some of those leadership lessons and qualities over to what you're doing today?
Some good and some bad. The small business world is much different. When I was in the corporate world, we had resources to be able to hire people, offices and desks and computers, and being able to attract people with salaries and benefits. And in the small business world, it's really, you don't have a lot of capital. You don't have, you're chasing revenue from day one. It's a different world. But it really now evolves more into finding the right people that I can train, that will believe in what our system is, and learn to trust that. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small businesses need really strong people to get you started. We're going in our beer business right now from really phase 1 to really phase 2. Phase 2 is going to be different for us. We need different kinds of leaders. We need not just the person who's going to fight, the big beer companies or the corporate world of beer. We need people now who can manage people. We need people who can put in systems and processes and drive efficiencies. We've moved into a new phase, and so now we've done a lot of training, or I have with my team, around this is what the next phase is going to look like of where we are. So it's a constant retraining and training and encouraging people to, and sometimes it's not quite so easy as encouraging. It's demanding in some instances, but it's definitely a challenge.
So what brought you to the beer world? Is that something you always have a heart for? I mean, were you always a big craft beer guy, or what was it the opportunity?
Well, some people would have said if they knew me in my early 20s that beer was my business, but for the last 30 years it really has not been. Really, you hear the whole story. Someone knew somebody who knew somebody, and I got a phone call one day, and this young man came into my office, and he had a bunch of stuff, and like every opportunity we see, we're all going to be wealthy, hey, $1 million the first year, and then you really look at the opportunity. And as I said, really, I don't think we're interested in the beer business. But, let me help you put this together. It's really not about how people can make your dream come true. It's really how you can make an investor's dream come true. That's really what we're trying to do. So as I looked at this and helped him develop some numbers and a business plan, I said, well, you know what? Let me just throw this out to a couple of guys in our group and just see if there's any interest in this. And there was. And I was pretty surprised. And it also took me sitting down with my own family and saying, do we want to be in this business? I mean, is this something that we want to do? And so so that's how we really got into the beer business. I'd never had a craft beer before we started. And I've learned to enjoy craft beer.
Yeah.
But I think our brewer, Gavin Secchi is his name, and he's our founder and our brewmaster. And I think he brews really, really good beers that a lot of people can enjoy. And he's led me down the path of enjoying craft beer. So it was really a business opportunity.
It was wonderful. And one thing I've noticed here in the Metroplex and DFW, it seems like there's a good amount of like some great quality craft beer. Have you found that it's very like an ultra competitive market, or is there some sort of like camaraderie? Because everybody's kind of got their own unique little spin on it. What have you found in that space?
It is both of those things. There is a tremendous amount of camaraderie. I can go into any brewery and talk to the owner, and they'll share information. How are we doing? What are you doing? Those kinds of things. But there's always a high level of competition between those breweries. There's a bigger competition between the craft, I think, to some degree, in fighting for space against the big brew companies. Yeah. But our space has become naturally competitive because there's more and more craft breweries opening up all the time. I think these days, I've got a list of the craft breweries that I enjoy, and I think there are some that make really, really good beer. there's some brewers that I really enjoy, and then there's some I don't enjoy as much. They may have one or two beers that I like, maybe not the entire portfolio that they've got. But my personal opinion is that the breweries that are coming out now, really, really, some of them are making very good beer. You better make really good beer if you're going to get into this business right now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our other guests have told us that one of the roles of a leader is to grow other leaders who become independent leaders on their own. Is that part of your philosophy as well? Or are you trying to help coach up some of these bright people who have ideas but maybe not the full capacity yet to be a leader?
Yeah, I think that's probably 75% of what my job is. I mean, look, I'm just one guy out there. I can't do everybody's job. And if I don't grow the right people and they don't have integrity and I can't trust, and they've got to have great judgment, and they've got to have a good work ethic, and I can go down the list of all the things that I look for or that I try to train for and look to identify every day. But those are the people that are going to take us to the third phase. Is during phase 2 are the people that have those characteristics and those qualities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued by what attracts investors to projects or opportunities. What happened in this particular craft beer niche that caused you and your investor group to say, we want to go there? What did they do right, or what would some of our entrepreneurs who are listening who are trying to attract investment capital?
Sure.
What's the key to that?
Well, I think that, if you're an investor, one of the things that might interest you is that some of the acquisitions that the big beer companies have made for companies like Revolver and Karbach. I mean, those were some pretty high multiples that they paid to be able to buy those companies. The market, so that's number one. Is there an opportunity for us if that's what we want to do? Other breweries get into the business and they say, all I want to do with my life is to be able to brew beer. I don't care if anyone, but our company, we like exit plans. And I don't know necessarily what our exit plan looks like today, but is in 15 or 20 years, or is it in 7 to 10 years? Something is going to happen as we expand into other parts of the United States or other parts of Texas. It takes additional capital to be able to do those things. So you've got to be thinking about that down the line. The second thing I think is that it's a really interesting, fun business. I want to tell you, we're not a restaurant. So, people can get cranky in restaurants sometimes, but nobody gets cranky coming into a brewery. I'm telling you, everybody is happy, and it's one of the greatest places to work in the world. We allow dogs in our brewery. When kids come into our brewery, we do lots of charity events. We do fun stuff all the time. It's more of a community center than it is a bar or a pub. And because of that, people just walk in with a smile on their face, and they have a great time. I think our investors are attracted to that. It's a fun industry. It's a growing industry, and that would be something fun that I'd like to invest in. I mean, there's a lot of ways to invest money that's not very much fun. You give the money over to your money manager or to your stockbroker, and you don't really know what's going on. But these guys can come down and have a beer with us. Right. They can see what we're doing and how we're doing and participate. Last night we're moving tables. I got 3 investors out there with me moving picnic tables. I mean, it's just fun.
And so you talked about going to phase 2, and in the bio, opening fall 2019. It's a little bit more specific. Soft opening tonight, correct?
Tonight, yeah.
And then what's that look like for the public and everything after that? And then I guess that would allow you to have more opportunities to do those things, to have the people come in and have that overall community feel. Because where's the location on the?
It's actually in downtown Carrollton, right next to the big silo at Beltline and I-35. And the city of Carrollton has been very generous in providing additional funds to take an old historic building and help us turn it into, I hope, something that will be very fun for people to have something new and kind of something old. Tonight's our soft opening for city council and investors and families and different people that we have. Saturday, we are actually open to the public. We're still under construction to a degree. Nothing major, but it's still dusty. And there's a few things that we got to work out. So our actual grand opening is it's November 16th, which is a Saturday. But we'll be open on Saturday, and people can kind of come and watch us as we put the final paint and things on there. But it's a great location. There's retail, there's restaurants. It's a up and coming area where people can come and shop and eat and have fun in that area. We are tremendously excited. We're in Farmers Branch right now, so it's just about a 1.5 mile move for us to this location. But it has been a labor of love, I'll be honest with you. We're tired, and it's been, this old shed didn't have running water, no plumbing, no electricity, no gas. So we've had to refit this building to make it suitable for people versus grain.
Right.
And we've done so. It'll be fun.
Very nice. John, I wanted to ask you about something, your experience in youth sports with disadvantaged youth. I think youth sports has played a tremendous impact on my life. I know Jason as well. And so it's a completely different outlet for a lot of these kids, and with you focusing on the disadvantaged side of things. What does that look like? What's your role? What are you doing? Can you share that with us?
My kids decided to play soccer, which I knew nothing about.
Yep.
And so I quickly became a football coach that was, or a guy grew up playing football that became a a soccer coach, and my team played more like a football team when my kids were 5 and 6 and 7.
Right.
But we found great coaches for them. We had a program called the ACES, and the gentleman from Africa, and he has taught me a lot in my life about love and how his life, a great story. He was, I think, 10 or 11 children in a drug-infested Mogadishu, and a German guy found him, and he's got a double E and a master's in double E. He's a smart guy, but he's quit that job and does soccer for youth full time, because that's what he feels like his life calling is. That guy that German coach rescued him to go on to great things and get a college scholarship and play on the national team there. And so I learned from him a great deal. And so I wanted my kids to play for that program because I really admire him as a man. In doing so, there's a lot of kids from other countries in particular, or in the United States, who love soccer but can't afford to play select soccer. And so we did a lot of things with regards to letting kids live with us, inviting them into our home, spending as much time. A lot of kids that didn't have, that parents were separated or divorced. We scholarshiped a lot of kids, both through companies and individuals. There's just a group of us that really invested as much of our time in a very tender age as we could. Some of those worked out well, and some of those didn't work out quite so well. But it's never wasted time. Obviously, when you're trying to invest not in companies, but in young men and young women. I mean, there's no greater calling in life.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, John. Before we get out here, we always like to hear, what are leaders doing? How are they sharpening their saw? I know you've been a little busy here recently, but any books, podcast, anything along those lines that has really struck a chord with you recently?
Well, I would love to tell you these 3 books and these 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
But for the last year of my life, I haven't done anything except jump into this beer business and try to get this building built. My wife and I recently moved, and I went through some boxes. Yeah. And I've got them listed in the order on my shelf of what's coming after Saturday when we open to the public. I'm going to go back. And so, but really, I think more than anything, one of the things that I enjoy is really sitting down and having discussions with a lot of people who have made a difference in business. We've got some great investors in 3 Nations. They're highly successful businessmen, not just because of the money that they've made in their business, but because they're just wonderful guys. Mm-hmm. And getting them involved and wanting to make a difference in the communities as well as with the employees that we have, that's been a lot of fun for me. We've all worked together. Most of us thought we were, either retired or getting close to it until we did this. But that's the only thing really motivating me are the people that are surrounding me right now. And I hope to get back to some of the academic stuff soon.
Perfect. John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking time today.
I appreciate it.
Dr. Blair, what you got for us?
Okay. We got our legendary leader back on live here. So you want to take a stab at it there, Kyle?
No, you kind of confused me. I think I know it, but I don't know if I want to say it.
Who do you want to think it is?
I can't come up with the honorary president of Israel who joined the NAACP
the only
from
person
Germany.
I can guess is Einstein.
Yeah, you're right. That's right.
Wow.
The NAACP threw me.
I know. When he came to Princeton, that's where he moved to, and he just saw he was very much sensitive to the racial injustices, and so he decided, I'm going to join the NAACP.
Wow.
And here one other little trivia about Einstein. His second wife was his first cousin, which gives a whole new perspective on E = MC squared. Did you know that? So there you go. Albert Einstein is our legendary leader today.
And with that, we have our first pun in trivia.
There we go. Oh. Well, that's a wrap for the podcast today. That's funny. That's on behalf of Dr. Ritchie, Jason Smith, and our special guest, John Royer. This is Kyle Watkins wishing you a good day. And remember this, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by the Carrington Group. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. To learn more about the Carrington Group, visit their website at www.carringtonfo.com or Google Carrington Group, Dallas, Texas. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphaned youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. To learn more about ISF, visit their website at isfsite.org or Google International Student Foundation to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.